Welcome into this week 4 edition of the show from the shoe. I'm Dan Herbner alongside my colleague, as it is always, Colin Hustle. Sometimes give him the co-host tag, but today I just felt like going with colleague. How you doing?
Thank you very much for that. Get a new, like you said, I get a new title every week.
Yes, you do. Absolutely. I'm the one that gives them out, so that's just how it's going to be. But
you're like Urban Meyer giving out new QB titles here.
Yeah, I guess we're going to just come out firing right away. So Ohio State did somehow pull out a victory 20-13 this weekend amidst a lot of talk about who's going to be the quarterback, some offensive line issues, difficult performance against Hawaii followed by a difficult performance against Northern Illinois. That's always going to end up with a top team in the nation having a lot of negative talk about them. So let's start it off with the quarterback talk right away. Cardale Jones doesn't play well, throws a couple of picks, 4 of 9 for 36 yards, gets replaced by J.T. Barrett, who then plays the rest of the game, goes 11 of 17, 97 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Neither one really a run threat. So what did you see out of the quarterback position? Obviously, it wasn't good.
It wasn't really not good. It was really bad. Coming into the year, we think that we hear all these jokes that Ohio State has 3 All-American quarterbacks. I mean, which one are they going to choose? No one's even looked like an above-average Big Ten starter thus far, or at least neither one of them. Apparently Braxton might as an H-back, but Cardale Jones started out, he went 4 for 9 for 36 yards and 2 interceptions, and those 2 interceptions were 2 of the worst possible passes that he could have made in the given situations. He hasn't looked comfortable. He looked comfortable a little bit against Virginia Tech. These past 2 games, he's looked. I don't even understand some of his reads.
And the thing about it is when he gets pulled out of the games and J.T. Barrett comes in, there's this expectation that the offense is going to start rolling again. Well, it's not rolling right now. The offense doesn't look good with J.T. Barrett in either way. I kind of body language doctor the offense because when J.T. Barrett comes in, It seems like they run smoother, they're more efficient. It looks like he has more control. And part of that is, well, he is a sophomore and he's also a captain. Mm-hmm. So he has those leadership qualities, but the offense isn't producing with J.T. Barrett at quarterback. So right now there isn't really a solution.
And it's not even the offense isn't producing with J.T. Barrett at quarterback. It's J.T. Barrett's not producing when J.T. Barrett's at quarterback. You can't blame it really on the offense. J.T. only threw 1 interception, albeit that was a terrible interception. He had either 1 or 2, at least 1, where the defender just completely dropped the interception. He threw so many questionable balls downfield. A lot of those completions were just real short passes, and that's why he only ended up with 97 yards. The shots they did take downfield weren't good decisions.
Well, to go along with it,
they weren't bad throws.
Right, the offense as a whole didn't play extremely well around him. So there were some drop passes, a drop pass by Van Ed, I know, and you see Urban Meyer do this little headset toss. I mean, he puts it back on right away. But the offensive line didn't play extremely well either. But going forward, who's the guy for Ohio State? I feel like Urban Meyer has to pick a guy.
The thing is,
who's it going to be?
Yeah, when I'm rewatching the game and I'm watching Cardale Jones play, I'm thinking, there's no way this man is going to be our quarterback there's no way he's going to be the quarterback next week. And then I watch JT play. I think, oh man, Ohio State doesn't have a quarterback next week. I have no confidence in them whatsoever, but I really have confidence that they will both be able to figure it out. But I'm not Urban Meyer. I don't really know why they're making these decisions. Is it because they're really worried that the other one's going to come in?
I don't know that that's the case, but you talk about the preparation that goes into what they do and the systems that you run with one versus the other. With Cardale Jones, the offense is based around more of a pro-style, sort of vertical passing, power run offense, while with J.T. Barrett, it's a more read option-based thing. And the most difficult part about it is if you're constantly switching these guys out, you're constantly switching systems, and you're constantly putting the onus on the offensive line and the other playmakers around them to switch what they're doing mid-game, which is just way too difficult.
Although I think there was more of the zone read type stuff this week that you said is normally a JT style game plan. I think they had a lot more of that this week. There were less inside runs, especially early in the game. I think more of the inside runs even came in the third quarter where Ezekiel kind of started to get going. Early on, it was a lot of outside runs. There were a couple of zone reads, but the quarterbacks, Braxton Miller didn't line up that much at quarterback this game. There were 4 quarterback runs, 2 each by Cardale and JT. It was a lot more. It was a lot more running backs and guys on jet sweeps, short passes, outside runs. It was sort of like a JT type offense, but neither quarterback could figure it out.
You're right, and transitioning into something else, but pretty much along the same lines, the offensive line had another below average game. This was possibly the worst game that the offensive line has played all season. And
it was bad.
But you talk about a week ago against Hawaii, Urban Meyer talked about how Hawaii out-schemed them. Well, Northern Illinois came in and they out-schemed the offense again.
He said it again,
and
that they hadn't practiced.
They were in
the
this
odd
front. The line could not get their double teams, and in an odd front where they run this 3-4, you can bring pressure from all directions, and that was the most difficult part. And that's why I think maybe Urban Meyer went with J.T. Barrett, because Cardale Jones maybe isn't as good at getting his offensive line into protections as well as J.T. Barrett. That's
very possible.
That's just what I see. I don't know that for sure, and I don't want to go out on a limb and act like I'm in the huddle. I'm not.
Well,
but
also,
that's just kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, to me, Cardale played bad enough where I think it was very reasonable what they told him.
Right, no doubt about it. And
but you might be right that that's why he played badly, because he couldn't get him in the right protections. That's very possible. I don't know, but that maybe we're just throwing out speculation now.
Right, and you talk about this schematic advantage that Northern Illinois and Hawaii had, and you look at, there was a change in offensive coordinator. And now they have Ed Warner, who's calling plays, Tim Beck, who gives input, and Urban Meyer. And you have to get these three guys on the same wavelength at once, and it's going to take time for them to gel and have chemistry. And the most important part about this is teams that either play a tougher out-of-conference schedule or aren't as talented as Ohio State would have lost that game.
Yeah,
and we'll get to this later, but that's the most important part of all of this, is they're having this rough patch, but they won the game. And the offensive line didn't play well, but they still won the game.
Yes, that's very true that they won the game, but there were so many signs, so many poor signs by the offense. By the way, we haven't even touched on the defense, which we need to, but let's just say the defense is unbelievable. Defense might be the best defense in the nation. But I guess we're still complaining about the offense, which is very reasonable. I do remember early, and I think our preseason, we were talking about Tom Herman being gone, and I remember you were more like, well, Urban Meyer's still here, so I think Ohio State will have that covered, but the way Houston's playing now on offense, and the way Ohio State's had struggles early this year, it has to make you wonder.
It does make you wonder, but my whole thought on this is that it's going to take time for those guys to gel as offensive coordinators and as play callers.
And Ohio State's lucky that they play this week schedule early.
Exactly. That was a game that a lot of teams lose. That's the game where a team that's supposed to win a national championship that's in this transitional period loses. And Ohio State won the game, but you still have to wonder, how long is it going to take these guys to gel? And it's not like that Ohio State plays a very difficult schedule. And the offensive line, I mean, they're going to be more talented than any defensive line they play up until Michigan State.
Yeah, and
so they'll have time to build chemistry, but you still makes you wonder. You want to be impressive if you're looking at a soft schedule in the committee's eyes.
Taylor Decker was talking about how they're going to improve as time goes on, and I really do believe that. But I just wish that they were prepared for the fronts that they were going to face already this year. And another thing, like, there's been so many stupid mistakes. This is the second time where I've had like a big bullet point. Just more stupid mistakes plague the offense. There's so many.
Transitioning into another part of this
fumbled
awful
snaps.
offensive performance.
Jalen dives for a punt in the fourth quarter, and I'm very glad that he caught it, because if he didn't, that would have been a fumble. They had multiple times where they were on third down. Ohio State would have a completion 1 yard in front of the first down marker. False starts again. Maybe that's a quarterback thing. Possibly that'll get fixed as time goes on, and maybe Ohio State will figure out who's their quarterback. There's just so many, and I can keep going, but what is going on here? Why are we having these mistakes?
I think that's the most concerning part about all of this. You talk about not having cohesion along the offensive line and not having cohesion with play callers, and that's stuff that can get fixed over time.
That just takes time.
But these stupid mistakes, it makes you feel like Ohio State is complacent and that they're being just lazy and not all in on these games. 5 turnovers, that has to go away. That absolutely has to go away, because Ohio State should have dominated this football game. And they started making plays in the second half. When they started giving the ball to their playmakers on the edge and letting them work where you didn't have to necessarily go inside 7-on-6. You got to get the ball on the outside and let the better guys go against guys that are less talented.
Yeah, and these turnovers.
It started working, but then these turnovers held them back so much.
They're coming at such terrible times as well. Like in the fourth quarter when Dontre had the fumble. Well, now he gave it away with 3 minutes to go, and Northern Illinois is down 1 touchdown. And Ohio State was on the 20, which means that Northern Illinois had to go 80 yards on Ohio State's defense, which was unbelievable all night, which means if you're an Ohio State fan, you're still pretty confident. But at the same time, that's just one of those mistakes that happens at the wrong time. JT throws, I'm not sure if his interception was in the end zone or if that's the one where the guy hit him in the face. And he dropped it. But I know one of those was he threw it into the end zone, and it was just a perfectly run time.
Right. And just moving on to another issue with the offense, the playmakers getting involved. It's been an issue. They have tried their best to get everybody involved, it seemed. I mean, I haven't seen a lot out of Dontre Wilson in the offense. I haven't seen a lot out of Corey Smith, but Jalen Marshall's gotten the football. Curtis Samuel's gotten the football.
Do you think that they should be getting the ball more than?
Yeah, why not?
Because there's so many. How are you going to? I named Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott, Curtis Samuel, Braxton Miller, Dontre Wilson, Jalen Marshall, Corey Smith, Paris Campbell. That's so many names. Not everyone's going to get like 8 touches a game. And I'm sort of okay with how it is right now. I think Curtis Samuel has looked really good. He deserves that increase in touches that Dontre and Jalen and Corey haven't gotten.
You're right. But the one thing I see from the quarterback position that is affecting what's happening with the playmakers, there just aren't any times where Ohio State quarterback Cardale or JT is getting the ball right away and just step and throw. Just a quick slant, getting the ball out to your guys. They started to do that more with these bubble screens and these now passes. And if you're struggling on the offensive line, why not do that a lot? You have such an advantage against any team you're going to play with all of these playmakers on the outside. You have to get the ball in their hands right now, and that's why I liked the second half game plan, because they got the ball to their playmakers right now and just say, here's the ball, make a play. And that's why I think JT is the better guy for the job.
The one thing that I will note about the offensive line is I think they've actually played fairly well in pass protection. I think the issue is the run blocking. In pass protection, there's been a few issues where you can almost pinpoint like this moment in the game where someone dipped inside and they got a pass rush and you forced Cardale or JT to run. Like that happened a few times, but it wasn't just a plague like it was against Virginia Tech last year in the second game of the year. It's more individual issues, and I think that's not as bad as the run game. And I think when you look at there's this one play where JT, he doesn't ever really feel totally. And I'm going to go back to the quarterback conversation because it matters in the playmakers and the offensive line discussions. He doesn't truly look comfortable sometimes when there's pressure, and he'll run outside of the pressure. Cardale does this too, but I'm with you. I think you made a good point. The Ohio State has so many guys you can get the ball to real quick on a 3-step drop. Almost everyone succeeds best when they do that.
Right,
I do agree with that.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I come back to that we talked about this offseason that maybe didn't get enough attention is the fact that Devin Smith is no longer in this offense. Because when they run this pro-style vertical passing offense, he is such an important part. Him and Cardale were the perfect pair together. You want to hear a crazy stat? In the first 4 games that Cardale played, that's against Wisconsin, against Alabama, against Oregon, and against Virginia Tech, on passes greater than 25 yards, 15 of 25. That's 60% completion. That's a better completion percentage than he has all year. In these last 2 games, over 2. Mm-hmm. They're not pushing the ball down the field, and if you're not going to do that, you can win games not doing that. If you're not going to do that, JT Barrett's quarterback.
And if you look at the names of those of their wide receivers, none of them really scream at you. This is a guy that's going to go deep down the field and beat a cornerback and go up and get the ball. Michael Thomas can do that, but I don't really think that that's his ideal role. And if you're talking about one guy who I think needs more touches, he's made the most of his touches. Every time he gets the ball, something good happens. When he made the catch for JT's only touchdown throw, it was an unbelievable catch. He got the 1 foot down. He's the only guy who I'd really trust to go deep, though, and Ohio State's really missing that, which is why I do think I'm with you. I'd probably lean towards JT at this point, but it's not strong. It's more because, well, less things might go worse if you have
and that's really
JT.
important. That's really important in the offense. And just moving on to the defense real quick, we just want to just bust through this because the defense has been sensational.
I don't even want
on
to
all
say we
fronts.
want to bust through that, though.
I
Because
do, though, because just time purposes. But the defense
But
has been
they've been
sensational.
so
We could
good.
talk about them forever. But I don't know. There aren't a lot of concerns that we have to talk about. I know that much.
there might be none. There's really nothing that I look at the defense and I say, wow, this worries me. Sometimes the linebackers don't get up in the inside run quick enough, so they'll give up like a 3 or 4 yard gain when it should be 1 or 2 yards. And if that's the only concern that I can even think of in my head, Ohio State's looking pretty good on that side of the ball.
The pass rush has been great. The secondary has been great. The linebackers have been stepping up in the run game. And just the fact of the matter is that Ohio State's defense definitely can win them football games, and it might have to for a little bit
And it
going forward.
has. It just did. Ohio. I wrote down Northern Illinois tried a few things. They tried an inside run with the running back, completely shut down. Adolphus Washington, I've never seen him play this well. It was an unbelievable game for him. They had tried a quarterback run, that went okay. They tried a draw, it didn't work. They tried a wide receiver screen just to get the linebackers to go side to side so they could run the ball up the middle more. That never worked. A running back screen, Joshua Perry sniffed it out every single time. Every single thing that Northern Illinois tried, Ohio State had an answer for.
And the defense has been playing just absolutely amazingly. So it's very encouraging for the Buckeyes. I welcome in David Drew. He is a Western Michigan sports beat writer for MLive.com. Thank you for joining us, David.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We'd always love to have people on from the opposing newspapers just to give us other insights. We're not Western Michigan experts by any stretch of the imagination, so it's always good to get that perspective. So coming into this game, obviously Ohio State has been talked about this week with their offensive difficulties. How confident is Western Michigan that they can hang around this game? They obviously did that against Michigan State. Do the fans around Western Michigan feel like they have a shot to hang in this game for 4 quarters?
Well, it's been kind of a roller coaster non-conference schedule for Western Michigan so far. They did play a very good game against Michigan State, and I don't think the Spartans quite expected the score to be that close in the fourth quarter. And then the next week, Western went down to Georgia Southern and really just played a pretty poor game. One of the worst games just in terms of just energy and all the just things outside of the X's and O's. Just really didn't come ready to play. They rebound last week, played really good against an FBS team in Murray State. So it's really, they're kind of looking for consistency coming into this week. Obviously the chances of WMU winning this week are very slim. I think this is a game where Western is just kind of looking at it to just feel better about where it's at heading into MAC play. And if they just so happen to be close by the end of the game, then so be it. But I think Western's just looking for a little bit of consistency to wrap up non-conference play.
Mm-hmm. And what, like you said, they really kept it much closer than I think most people in East Lansing for the Michigan State game would have thought. So what really worked in that game for Western Michigan that they're going to need to replicate against Ohio State? And then what did Michigan State do that really succeeded against Western Michigan?
Well, Western Michigan had a really tough time running the ball against Michigan State, and I think most teams are going to have a pretty tough time against that MSU front seven. But in the second half, Western made some pretty nice adjustments with their pass protection, and they would keep a running back in, and were able to actually give quarterback Zach Terrell some time to throw the ball, and he actually did a pretty nice job of finding the open guy, and there's a handful of them in Western Michigan's receiving core, and 2 of the big names that stand out are Corey Davis and Daniel Braverman.
Yeah, and I mean, those guys have been putting up some pretty lofty numbers. You talk about Zach Terrell, a guy who's thrown for 315 passing yards a game. Daniel Braverman already 40 catches on the season. Does Western Michigan feel like those guys are good enough to go out and make plays against an Ohio State secondary and an Ohio State defense in general that has been playing extremely well? It's a very deep defense. Do you feel like those are guys that can actually make plays against a vaunted secondary?
I look at a guy like Corey Davis, and I really do think he is an NFL receiver, and I think he's a guy that could come on to any Big Ten team and be an impact receiver. So I do think that potential is there. Again, this is a game where I look up front, and that's a lot of times where you see, a Big Ten team going up against a MAC or another mid-major team. It really kind of comes down to the line play because that's where you see a lot of the size and talent difference. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest keys in this game. Like you said, I look at Ohio State secondary, and I compare that to Michigan State, and I think Ohio State just has more playmakers, just a little bit more talented, deeper, like you said. Just watching that Michigan State secondary in the season opener, and I think they still had some things to figure out, and Western Michigan was able to capitalize a little bit. But I think Ohio State's going to come ready to play. But that's not to say Western isn't going to move the ball through the air a little bit, because I do think there is enough skill for the Broncos to do that.
And like you said, a lot of it will come down to the line play. And one of the things that Ohio State has really struggled with is different kind of defensive fronts that's been thrown at them. Virginia Tech used the vaunted bear front, which I think people in Columbus are just tired of hearing about. This past week, Northern Illinois came out in an odd front that Ohio State had never faced before. What kind of front does Western Michigan have? Because Ohio State's offensive line has really struggled as of late.
Yeah, Western Michigan it's a basic 4-3 defense, but it's a pretty blitz-heavy defense, and they will give you some different looks with the outside linebackers. Sometimes lining up on the outside, on the edge, outside of the end, and sometimes they'll show blitz up the middle. It's a pretty blitz-dependent defense. This is a defense that they can stack up pretty well in the MAC. They play a lot of man coverage in the secondary, and they're able to get away with that because they do have some pretty good corners. But when you start comparing, this defense going up against, an offense like Ohio State, Michigan State, that caliber, it becomes a lot more difficult. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of pressure Western Michigan can generate against this Ohio State offensive line.
And obviously, PJ Fleck has come in and done a lot of good things for Western Michigan. They go 1-11 in his first season, but then they turn around, go 8-5, make a bowl game, and there are good expectations going into this year and even going into next year. Now, we like to do predictions towards the end of the show, and I am going to ask you to give a prediction on the game. But first of all, what do you think is a prediction for Western Michigan's season ending up this year, obviously with chances in the MAC and such?
I predicted Western Michigan to go 8-4 this season, but that was kind of dependent. I thought Western Michigan would go 2-2 in the non-conference. I predicted them to beat Georgia Southern. So at this point, I'm kind of still a little bit up in the air about how things are going to go. It's going to be really hard to tell this weekend. They open up MAC play against Central Michigan in a couple weeks, and I think that'll be a lot better barometer of where the Broncos are at. But I still think, I really do think this is a bowl team. I think this could be a 7 or 8 win team still this year.
And would you care to venture a guess at the score of the game this weekend?
Yeah, it's something I've kind of been tossing around in my mind a little bit. I think this is a game where I think Ohio State's going to come out and really just try to put it all together. I think talent-wise, Ohio State is just too superior for Western Michigan. I'm going to take the Buckeyes 52-17 in this game.
Yeah, we've been talking about some big scores the last couple of weeks, and they haven't materialized. But, I mean, we'll see this week. That's David Drew from MLive.com. He does a lot of good work for Western Michigan sports. David, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This game, before we get into the game score, which we know which way we're going to lean, even though maybe it'll be closer because these last two games have been. Who do you think is going to be the quarterback for Ohio State this coming week, and why?
I'm picking JT Barrett without really much confidence at all. Like I said earlier, I think there's a better chance that less bad things happen when JT's in. Cardale throws more questionable decision passes than JT does. And I think that combined with the leadership, combined with, like you said, about the wide receivers, Cardale really doesn't have a deep threat. I do think it makes more sense at this point to go with JT.
Game score?
I mean, I'm going to go big just like the other times. I'm going to have to go with Ohio State 52-7.
52-7. That's 10 less points than David Drew picked. But I'm with you on JT Barrett. I think that he's the starter this week. I think that the way Urban Meyer stuck him in the fourth quarter when all bets were off and they needed to make plays down the stretch, I think that was extremely telling of who Urban Meyer has the most confidence in and the most trust in.
Can I just say one more thing?
Go for it.
When time was running down, when there's 3 minutes to go, why did Ohio State go in hurry up? Why were they in hurry up offense when they could? All they needed to do was just run the clock out.
I couldn't.
That made 0 sense. But please go ahead. I had to get that in there.
No, you're right. But I think
Made
Urban
no
Meyer
sense.
having JT down the stretch was very telling. I think, like what I said earlier, you look at Cardale Jones, he's not even putting the ball up down the field these last 2 games. He's not even throwing it to his deep men, and he's making too many mistakes. I think JT Barrett, I think the ceiling for Cardale is higher, but I think JT Barrett's just too much of a steady hand to keep him on the sideline for now, especially during a downtime. So give me JT Barrett and give me Ohio State big in this game. I think they come out with fire. Give me 65 to 7.
I feel like
They're
I
gonna
said
take
that.
care of
I've said that
business
the
this
last 2 games as well, and I've been wrong. But
No,
at some point,
do not back a
at
team
some
like
point.
this against the wall. But that will do it for us for this week. For Colin Hassel, I'm Dan Herbener. We'll be back next week around the same time. The game is 3:30 in the Horseshoe, just like we've been for the last 20 minutes or so. So, like I said, for Colin Hassel, I'm Dan Herbener. This has been the show from the Shoe. Thanks for watching.